Alright, welcome back to part 3 and what should be the final part of the Red Shadow's personal gaming history, my little recount of gaming in my life from being a little kid up until right this very moment. So in the last video I talked about how I just got a PlayStation 2 in early 2002. A lot of things changed that year for me in the gaming scene and in life in general. Of course, I got the PlayStation 2, and I mentioned how I got rid of my PS1 and all my games, and I'd already got rid of my N64 a couple years back. I got married in 2002, and as just about anybody will tell you, unless you're lucky enough to have married somebody who was as passionate about gaming as you are, most of the time for a guy when he gets married, gaming becomes one of those things that the other doesn't really like but tolerates. I don't know, maybe I'm overgeneralizing for too many people. A lot of people will say, they didn't really care. My wife, ex-wife now, but my wife at the time, she didn't hate it. She just didn't really understand it, and she wasn't really into it. And nobody is going to like it if the other person's spending a lot of money on something like that. Which I'm not going to say I spent a lot of money. I went through the same thing with my games, like I mentioned with the PS1, where I used my games as currency. I would trade them away to game shops when I was either done with a game or was frustrated or couldn't beat a game. I would take the game and trade it away to the game store towards another game. So if a game was $50, but I could trade 3 decent games in there and get $25 off, I only had to pay $25 for a new game. But now as a collector, I look back and say, that was dumb, because I could have had all kinds of games. I could have had a big game collection. What can I say? I really wish I had nothing but games everywhere. That's just the kind of guy that I am. But I had to slow down on my purchases of games, and it gave me a chance to play games a little bit more meticulously and really try to get something out of them. But like I said, gaming changed a lot then. And the PS2 really started to show the first signs that gaming as a industry was aging. Not in a bad way, but it was growing up with the kids who played games in the 80s and into the 90s were now becoming the adults in the 2000s, and the gaming industry kind of had to cater for them. The average age of a gamer was rising. Nowadays they say it's somewhere around about 30-ish. But they had to age and grow up with everybody. So games were going to be more mature, they were going to be more fleshed out, they were going to be more like movies. They had to entertain, they had to go overboard in their budget, and they had to do all kinds of things. Some of those things were a detriment to gaming, some of them not so much. But, things like QuickTime events, people really don't like games that play out as interactive movies and don't let you do much. To each their own. Speaking of QuickTime events, I should mention that somewhere around about that same time in 2002, might have been even 2001, the Dreamcast, which had been going for a couple years but had not really been on my radar because I didn't want to buy another console at that time. The Dreamcast was kind of fluttering its way out of the industry. I mean, I'm sure most people know the story of Sega and the Dreamcast and how basically they couldn't get third-party support until the console had showed some success, but the console couldn't show some success without third-party support. So what was going to happen? What were they going to do? Maybe they made some bad choices in what they were doing with the Dreamcast, and it just they were doomed. It only lasted a couple years. They actually released less games for it in the US than the N64 had, but they had some great games. Shenmue, one of my favorite games of all time, was a Dreamcast game only, but I didn't get to experience it until the early 2000s. Anyway, I'm getting off that particular subject I was trying to get onto, whatever that means. I tried to get a Dreamcast when it was pretty much confirmed that they were gone and they were out and they were leaving the console industry, and retailers were slashing the prices of the Dreamcast down to like $100 or sometimes even $50. But nobody had one of those in my town. So within a year or so later, I had to buy a used Dreamcast from a game store. But I finally got to own one. I finally got to play some Shenmue. I finally got to play some other games on there that I really enjoyed. And I just thought I should mention that in there. I've had a Dreamcast a couple of times in the last decade. Get one, have some games, play it, enjoy it, then I get rid of it. Then I got one and it didn't work right, so I had to get another one. That's currently where I'm at right now. I have a working one that's hooked up to my television. I have one that doesn't work sitting over here on a shelf. But I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Dreamcast. I never did own a GameCube, really. I did own a GameCube a couple years ago for a week or two, and then I sold it on to someone else. I was being really wishy-washy about what I wanted to keep, especially because a few years ago I thought I was going to be moving. So right now when I want GameCube fix, I have a Wii that can play the GameCube games. I'm trying to hit some of these smaller consoles here because I want this to be the last video, and more than anything I need to cover the PS2, but also PS3 and 360. So I had a PS2, that was the main console. I had all kinds of great games for it. Shadow of the Colossus being one of the big ones. Continuations in the series of like Metal Gear Solid, Tomb Raider, Twisted Metal Black was a great game. I'm trying to think, Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat games, especially Mortal Kombat Deception was like one of my favorite PS2 games. The Grand Theft Auto games, they just blow me away, those open worlds that they've done. Just amazing stuff. The PS2 holds a really special place in my heart, just under like the PS1. Sometimes when I say what my favorite consoles are, I'll say PS1, Dreamcast, N64. But I really could say PS2 because it plays PS1 games plus all of its games. So PS2 it's up there for me, and you'll see some more of that when I start my favorite games series, because there'll be quite a few PS2 games in there. But then, and I still have my PS2 that I bought in 2002. It still works. It's still over on my shelf. It's hooked up to my television. I don't use it a whole lot. I don't play any movies on it. I don't often jump onto it and play PS1 games on it, because I can do that on the PS3, which of course is down at the moment. It's mainly used for the PS2 and to use the memory cards and stuff like that for it. But anyway, I'm feeling pressured by the time limit right now. I only have a few more minutes. The PS2 took me through a lot of years while I was married, and it was the console of choice for that time period. In 2006 and 2007, I believe, were the years when the Wii and the 360 and then the PS3 came out. I didn't get into any of those consoles at that time. Once again, didn't want to be a glorified bug tester, didn't want to be the guy that gets a new console when all the games don't maximize the strength of the console. And I didn't want to spend mega boo dollars, because especially the PS3, they were expensive when they first came out. So I was working in retail, so I watched it come and I watched it proceed, and I watched everybody else get the consoles, but I did not get one until 2010, which is the year in which I got a divorce. And basically, I just said to myself, it's kind of a down year for me. I'm living with my dad and my grandma, and I can save some money. I'm going to buy myself an Xbox as a treat and get to know the new console generation. So that happened in 2010, summer of 2010, with the 360, because it was the cheaper option of all the consoles. And it also gave me a chance to get some original Xbox games, which I never got. I never really had any interest in it. Sorry, Microsoft fans. Xbox One, Xbox One, that's a new one. The original Xbox had a bunch of really good games, which I'm discovering now, which is a perk of that. But the 360 brought me a whole bunch of really great gaming experiences. The first big one for me was Red Dead Redemption. What an amazing game. I have Red Dead Revolver. It's a fun game. I played the gun game on PS2. It was really, really fun. It was getting there, but Red Dead Redemption put open world Western style gaming on the map. And I'll be disappointed if I don't ever get to play a sequel to that if it only comes to the new current gen PS4 and Xbox One. It'd be a shame, but what can you do? I'm trying to think of some other games that I played on there. Far Cry 3, of course, the new Tomb Raider game. I touched on that in my top games of 2013. I'm probably missing a whole bunch of stuff, but that's fine because there'll be time for that stuff later when I do top 5 and top 10 lists for all my consoles. I'll hit up on my favorites for that. I got a Wii in late 2012 and late 2011, and a PS3 in early 2012 that I didn't open up until early 2013. But that finally gave me access to those consoles, and the backwards compatibility of the Wii gave me GameCube access, which is just awesome. Plus I do the homebrew thing, which if I could ever master how to do it, would unlock an entire brand new world of classic games for me. I just have to be smarter than the computer and all the way that ROMs and all that kind of stuff works. I said ROMs. Well, my time is starting to get a little bit low. I know I have a couple more minutes, so I kind of want to wrap this up. But that's my gaming history there. Oh, and I don't want to leave out the fact that I've been a consistent PC gamer in the background, but I don't like the PC stuff beyond things like World of Warcraft up here. I'm not that big into the online thing, and a lot of people who say, oh, PC gaming, it's the best graphics, it's mod access and all kinds of stuff like that. It is all those things, but for a gamer like me, what really matters is just the games. Most of the games that I have on the PC are either my old PC software type stuff like Myst and Riven and X-Files Game of Phantasmagoria and a bunch of older titles like that, or it's the stuff I have on my computer through Steam and GOG.com, which are usually older games, indie games, offbeat stuff. I'm not one of those guys who's like, I have to go get Halo on the PC, Call of Duty on the PC, Battlefield on the PC, because one, they're going to look amazing, and two, they're going to give me the online component. First of all, my computer isn't good enough to make any of those games look amazing, and I'm not going to dump a bunch of money on a supercomputer just so that the graphics will be better. I'm not a graphics whore, and I don't really care about that part. But for me, the PC is a bastion for classic stuff and offbeat stuff. So my camera looks to be trying to tell me that the battery is getting ready to get low, so I guess I probably better wrap this all up. I got pretty close to it anyway, and that gives you a pretty good idea of my history in gaming. Hopefully nobody got tired of this, me just rambling on about the games. In the future, I plan on doing my favorite games series, where I'll talk more in depth about these games. I'm going to go through all of my collections, game by game. Those might be long and boring, but you've been warned. And I'm going to talk about my specific favorite games in the Red Shadows Favorite Games series. So look out for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.